what is a phoneme? The fancy definition is any of the perceptually distinct sounds or units of sound in a specified language that distinguish one word from another. Basically, think of them kind of like as syllables, but they're syllables only of sound. So what does a phoneme mean? How do we break it down? Let's start with the simple ones of two phoneme words. At the very top, we have add. Basically, to make the word add, we need two phonemes, which means two mouth shapes. We need a and we need d. A, d, a, d. Two shapes were necessary to achieve the word add, hence two phonemes. Key, k, e, right? Two is t, oo, right? Two phonemes were necessary, two mouth shapes. Moving right along to three phonemes, right? Again, these words are still three letters. T is three letters, mad is three letters. Why are these in different categories? Well, guess what? For mad, we need three mouth shapes to make that word. Hence why it's a three phoneme word. We need m, a, d. To make mad, we need to go through three mouth shapes. Mad. So that's why it has three phonemes. Same thing with dog, right? You need d, a, g. P, on the other hand, going back to two, is just p, and then e. So it is kind of like a syllable, but not like a grammatical syllable, because if you think of it that way, it's not going to make sense, because a lot of these words are the same amount of letters. It's just the amount of mouth shapes that you need to make for this word to read. So learning how to break down a word in the correct phonemes is going to allow it to read when you're animating. Not understanding phonemes and not understanding how many phonemes go into this word a lot of times leads to the lip sync being lost. Like it's just not, it doesn't read. But the artistry in all this is that we can sometimes blend stuff in a way that it looks good, but it's not necessarily completely accurate. This is where it just gets tricky in terms of being just good at animation and knowing how those things, those cheats can be applied. Listen to every sound. Use those sounds to your advantage. What I mean by this is that you may have picked your audio clip, you may have listened to it quite a few times by now, but have you really listened to it? Because you'd be surprised how many students I have that don't pick up on really small portions of, really subtle portions of their audio clip. Listen to the audio closely and pick up on all those little enunciations. And I'm talking breath. I'm talking like little sounds, like a little scoffs or things that are happening in between the audio. If you hear a character go, listen, I'm not going to say this to you, right? That first, put that in your lip sync. Don't just ignore that and make it, I'll just open the mouth for a second and do that. That's a breath, right? That is something that you should be using for your performance. Take advantage of every little sound, because the closer you can act to those sounds, the more believable the animation is going to be. Don't overcomplicate. It's super easy to go in once you start doing your mouth pass and just make the mouth as crazy complicated as possible and just be like, you're touching everything, you're making everything move. The less you're doing with the mouth, the better. You can always refine later, but achieve your mouth shapes in the simplest way possible. Generally, animating a mouth, you're going to have less complex shapes on the bottom lip and the more complex shapes on the top. So you might have something like this, but you're not going to really have, I can't even make that same shape on the bottom. You're not going to have that because we're just not capable of making those shapes generally. So complicate a little bit at the top and then keep this generally a straight line. And I'm going to go over this in the demo again. Listen to the sounds and not the letter. Some people like to think of the letter that's being said. Don't think about that. It's all about the sound that's being said, because at the end of the day, we all say letters slightly differently. We'll make sounds differently, especially if we have accents, right? So it's not about the letter of how you spell the word. It's about how the person is saying this word, right? So if I think about the word itself of letter, right? If we break it down, it's letter, right? Two T's. One would expect a T kind of sound in there, but it's actually, if you say it like an American, right? Like really kind of smushing your mouth together, it's letter, 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 right? Like that's the sound. It's not letter, as you would expect, kind of European way of saying it. It's letter. So all of a sudden, that sound has changed. It's not the same sound. If we were going by just the letters themselves, we would be acting differently. So listen to the sound, not the letter. If you have words that need to be kind of mashed together, you can do that through one or two phonemes without needing to really drag it all out and make a big meal out of it. So how many women do you see?
How many women do you see in this?
Lots of. How many women? Right, she's going talking really quickly. Let's see how that got broken down. Ha. 2 frames later, right? Ha, ooh. So we got our ha, ooh, 2 frames apart. W going into an M shape, 2 frames after. Many ends up being just one thing. So going many, it's many. As soon as the M opens up into the ah, 2 frames later, they're going for any. 2 frames is my magic number of let's animate the mouth on 2s. To me, that's the perfect amount of animation. And then sometimes I need to go between those 2 frames and make a more specific transition. But 2 frames is generally, especially for talking fast, how much the mouth is going to be moving. The any is hitting all at once. 2 frames after, going into w of women. 2 frames into the M. 2 frames about into the E. And then this is the tricky part. N, D, O, Y, O. This whole section is kind of, it goes from an open mouth to a closed mouth of everything from women do you, all of women do you, no, I'm sorry, N do you, the N do you after the whoa part. N do you is just N do you, right? That whole part is just being broken down into 2 phonemes. And then we break that apart with an S for C. The S is kind of unavoidable. You have to give me the S. But for a lot of vowel type sounds of and do you, right? We can kind of, we can kind of simplify that into just simple motions that encompass what she's saying.